Hey everyone, today I'm sharing my absolute favorite lens, the Canon RF 70 to 200mm f2.8. Of course, you can tune away if you're not a Canon mirrorless camera user, but if you're interested in the 70 to 200mm f2.8 in general, regardless of brand, keep watching. The Canon RF 70 to 200mm f2.8 is the lens that brought me back to Canon after switching to Sony for years. If you are an amateur photographer who loves to travel, photographs people, kids, or candid moments in nature scenes, this might be the top lens you want to consider investing. In one of my previous videos, my essential camera gear and accessories, here's the link, I mentioned that I didn't use this lens very much on my 2-month solo trip with my 2 kids in Europe last year. It wasn't the most convenient choice in crowded, narrow European streets where I often had to keep a long distance to photograph my kids. But during my recent road trip in Western Sichuan province in China, exploring Tibetan culture in the high plateau above 4,000 meters, and our summer trip to Iceland earlier this year, this was my go-to lens to photograph my family and kids, as well as landscapes, and sometimes even wild animals. The stunning snow-capped mountains, wide open spaces, and minimal crowds were the perfect setting to make this lens shine. So today, we'll talk about who this lens is for, where it truly excels, and its pros and cons. This lens is a perfect fit for you if you mostly photograph outdoors, particularly in the nature. Whether your backdrop is mountains, canyons, forests, prairies, waterfalls, rivers, lakes, or oceans, you name it. You want a lens that works for a wide selection of subjects, including people and landscapes. I'll come back to this with more details later. You love capturing candid, authentic moments, like kids playing, jumping, people walking, or enjoying the scenes. You often photograph fast-moving subjects and prefer a zoom lens for its convenience to adjust your composition. You care about image quality. While there is a smaller f4 version for the 70 to 200mm, the f2.8 gives you that beautiful subject background separation, laser sharp focus, and more importantly, in low light conditions such as in heavy shaded areas or golden blue hour timing. You want a telephoto lens that does not take up a huge space in your camera backpack and is easy to carry. There are many 70 to 200 f2.8 lenses, but this one is probably the smallest. I used the Canon EF 70 to 200mm f2.8 for over 10 years, but I wouldn't walk around with it on long hikes. It was just too big and heavy. When traveling with young kids, the situation gets worse since you're already hauling tons of their stuff. Since I got the Canon RF 70 to 200mm f2.8, I would simply leave it on my camera while on a hike, and it didn't break my neck or arm. Last but not least, you are a Canon mirrorless camera user. This lens is part of the Canon RF lineup and is built for their mirrorless cameras. So where does this lens really shine? Here are the key scenarios where it excels. Candid, unposed travel and family moments. As I mentioned in previous videos, my photo style is a mixture of documentary, candid, and action. I almost never stop my family and kids to pose for me to take their travel pictures. Whether I was photographing my kids exploring the nature or capturing candid interactions, the 70 to 200mm zoom range gave me the flexibility to frame the shot without needing to move around too much. Now, as for my husband, even he is very used to me taking pictures for our family trips, he's still camera shy. A telephoto lens allows me to stay far away to capture him or his interaction with our kids naturally without sticking a big camera right in front of his face and making him uncomfortable. If you're a follower of my photo journey for the past 10-15 years, you know I'm a big into landscape photography. My go-to lens for landscape photography has typically been wide-angle lenses such as Canon EF 16 to 35mm f2.8, which I had used for 12 years, or Canon's RF 15 to 35mm f2.8 when I migrated from Canon DSLR to Canon mirrorless. However, during my China trip a month ago, I have used this Canon RF 70-200mm lens extensively to photograph landscapes. We were sitting in a Jeep on a 10-day road trip crossing multiple mountains between 3,500 to 5,000 meters every day. Our kids had jet lags mixed with high altitude sickness and wouldn't even leave the Jeep. Without hiking to any perfect vantage points or even setting up a tripod, not to say 2 tripods like what I did in my past, I photographed many mountain scenes with my 70-200mm telephoto lens in handheld positions, just steps away from our Jeep, whenever we had the chance to stop. If I used a wide-angle lens in the same scenario, the mountains would appear too small and far away in my frame. In addition, I wasn't taking photos during sunrise or sunset. If I used a wide-angle lens, my composition would include too much blank sky, which didn't really add too much value to the photo. The 70-200mm allowed me to zoom in, fill the frame, and really capture the grandeur of the peaks with details, and kept the boring sky out of the frame. In one of my past videos, how to take great photos in crowded scenes, I shared a unique tip, using people as the foreground element to frame your shots. The f2.8 aperture on this lens makes this technique even more effective. It allows you to blur the crowd in the foreground and draw attention to your main subject, whether that's a landmark or another person. During some of the busier parts of our China trip, like the bustling tea market in Chengdu, the capital city of Sichuan province, this trick helped me create unique shots even in crowded environments. Another past video, the 6 easy composition tips for amazing travel photos, I shared one of my favorite composition tips of using people as a foreground to make your landscape subject stand out. You find this very useful in crowded places where you couldn't get a clean shot. By using the long end of the 70-200mm zoom range, you can easily cut out the crowd and focus on a faraway scene with blurred people in the foreground. Even better, have the person to look at the landscape to invite your audience to have an immersive experience with you. Look at this photo. If you zoom out or use a wider angle lens, you'd include the crowd and clutter in your frame. Not the best composition for a memorable travel photo. In summary, this lens truly shines in open spaces where you are surrounded by stunning mountains, wide plains, and minimal crowds. Even in crowd, as long as you have a beautiful scene at a distance, you can just blur out the crowd as your foreground and frame your faraway subjects beautifully. One of the biggest advantages of the 70-200mm is the flexibility to reframe your shots quickly without chasing someone far. Imagine photographing your kids, running around, capturing a faraway temple in a boat ride, or framing subjects across vast open plains. Scenarios where moving closer isn't practical. In these scenarios, it's much easier to get a good shot with a zoom telephoto lens than a prime lens within the 70-200mm range. Let's talk about the pros and cons of the Canon RF 70-200mm f2.8. Compared to any other 70-200mm f2.8 lenses, regardless of brands, this RF version is much smaller and can easily fit into my camera backpack and stay on my camera for a long hike. This is the biggest reason I bought a Canon mirrorless camera, even after I switched from Canon DSLR to Sony. The f2.8 aperture not only delivers beautiful, creamy blur that helps isolate your subject from its foreground and background, but it also ensures exceptional sharpness and clarity. Even in low-light scenarios like dusk, indoors, or in heavily shaded areas such as forests, you can maintain a fast shutter speed and lower ISO for clean, high-quality results without compromising image details. With its versatile 70-200 zoom range, you can seamlessly transition from capturing wide, scenic landscape to detailed, flattering portraits without needing to swap lenses. This flexibility allows you to frame your shots precisely, whether you're photographing distant mountains or focusing on a subject's expressions, saving time and effort in the field. Now the downside. This lens is not cheap, especially compared to the alternatives like the f4 version. It's designed exclusively for Canon mirrorless cameras, so if you are using other brands or older Canon DSLRs, this won't work for you. If you use this lens for indoor portraits, you probably will end up big headshots most of the time, but it's not a bad thing if you like close-ups. While 200mm gives you a long distance reach, it's still a bit shorter for wildlife photography, especially if you're photographing animals from far away. Honestly, this lens hood is massive and I never use it. It's the one design flaw for me, but the lens itself is so good that I can't overlook it. Let me know in the comments below if you're one of those photographers who always use lens hoods. I'm just curious. I don't bring any lens hoods with me on any trips because I use filters. You can check this video where I shared my detailed opinion and advice on which filters are worth your investment. In summary, the Canon RF 70-200mm f2.8 is an incredible all-around lens for travel photography, landscapes, and candid moments. If you are a Canon mirrorless camera user looking for a lens that's compact, versatile, and delivers professional quality images, this might be the perfect fit for you. When I say compact, it's relative compared to the other 70-200mm f2.8. If you find this helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon for more photography tips in the future. See you next time.